Hello friends, we are discussing the UPSC CDS 2020 examination and we are aiming at trying to identify the pattern in which UPSC is asking in other examination, and we are focusing to predict questions for UPSC prelims, civil services prelims examination of 2020. So in previous video we already discussed the modern India questions asked in the CDS examination and geological scientist examination. In today's video we are going to discuss the ancient India and medieval India of CDS 2020. The first question is, so now we will see the medieval India question. Who among the following Mongol leaders did not cross the Indus and attack? So all the invasion which took place in India, it took place after the passing of this Khyber Pass. This is the Khyber Pass and crossing of the Indus River. Only after crossing the Indus River they could reach the India. So this Indus River and this Khyber Pass was one of the important boundary for India. So many rulers crossed these both and entered and captured this region, and many people didn't cross this and went away here. One of the important person is Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan during the period of Iltutmish, he was in the border of this Indus River and he was thinking about attacking India, but luckily he didn't attack India. If he would have attacked India at that time, the course of Indian history would have been different. He turned away towards the Iran region, and hence A is the answer. He didn't attack India. All the three others attacked India in the various time periods. If you could see, each one would have attacked in the various time period. For example, in 1241, that is 13th century, Mongol leader Tayar Bahadur invaded the Punjab. So he invaded Punjab in 1241. 1241 was the time during which there was a political vacuum after the death of Iltutmish. So in that time, Tayar Bahadur invaded the Punjab. After the death of Iltutmish, there was a very big tussle for the succession. On one side we had Razia Sultana, who was the daughter of Iltutmish, and other side we had son of Iltutmish, Bahram Khan, and these two were fighting, and there was a very big issue going. The Muslim leader Muslim leader of this Negudari region. There is a region called Negudari region. This Negudari region is found in the present Pakistan-Afghanistan border. So we know this is India, and we are having Pakistan here and Afghanistan here, and this region is called as Negudari region. So Negudari region is located on the northwest of the Indus River. So this is Indus River. It is located in the northwest. From this Negudari region, this local governor Abdullah, he tried to invade India in 1292. That is also true during the time of Khalji dynasty. See, Tayar Bahadur came during the slave dynasty, and Abdullah invaded during the Khalji. When Jalaluddin Khalji, the father-in-law of the Alauddin Khalji, Jalaluddin Khalji was ruling in 1292, this Abdullah's invasion took place. Next we have this Kutluk Khwaja. Kutluk Khwaja invasion also took place in the Khalji dynasty time only, but at that time the leader was not Jalaluddin but Alauddin himself. Alauddin Khalji was the leader during the Kutluk Khwaja's invasion, and it took place. Actually, Kutluk Khwaja didn't succeed because the army of Alauddin Khilji defeated the Kutluk Khwaja. So this was a successful invasion, and this was a successful invasion, but this was not a successful invasion because the invader was defeated. So the answer is Genghis Khan. He never crossed the Indus. The famous Mughal painting depicting Jahangir embracing the Safavid king Shah Abbas. So Safavid dynasty is a very important dynasty in the present day Iran region. So this is a very important, very strong and prominent rule in the present day Iran region, which is northwest of India. So one of the like we had this Mughal regime, there was this Safavid dynasty, and Shah Abbas was one of the successful leader of Safavid dynasty. So one day Jahangir had a dream of meeting this Safavid king and hugging him. So he wanted to make it as a painting because Jahangir was very interested in the painting, and the Mughal school of art, Mughal school of painting flourished during the Jahangir's time, we all know. So Jahangir wanted to paint this thing, hence he called his painter, his famous court painter Abdul Hassan, and he wanted to paint this. So this was the painting where Jahangir is hugging the Safavid king Shah Abbas. But here, if you could see, there is a dominance is shown in the Jahangir side. Jahangir is shown in a greater size when compared to the Safavid ruler. Again, Jahangir is wearing a lot of ornamental dresses compared to him. Jahangir is standing over a lion, but he is standing over a goat. See, this is a predator-prey relationship, and goat has to subdue to the predator. So Jahangir indirectly is conveying that Safavid kingdom should come under the Mughal kingdom. So that is Mughal is always superior. So that is what he is trying to convey, and there is a world map here. So Jahangir is also called as the man who captured the world. So he had the title of the man who captured the world. So and hence to depict that it is depicted that as if he is standing over the world here, and there is a very big hollow because king used to have hollow, and this is hollow, and since both the people are Muslim, there is a crescent here. So that is the significance here. So this was painted by Abdul Hasan. And Mughal school of painting is very important, guys. Please read that. Next, which of the following statements about Mughal Mansabdari system? Mansabdari system, which was prominently brought by Akbar. So that is a question regarding the Mansabdari system. In the Mansabdari system, there were two things. We had Zat and Sawar. So Zat is the rank given to the each person, and Zat determines the level where he stands and what is the salary the individual Mansabdar is going to receive. So Zat is the rank. So Sawar indicates the number of cavalrymen and number of horses each Mansabdar should maintain. So Sawar indicates the number of cavalrymen and horses. For example, if a person is assigned a Zat of 1000, let us take an example. That person, if they are classified into further 3, okay. If a person is maintaining 1000 cavalrymen, then he is called as full Sawar and given the highest rank. If a person is maintaining only half of the rank whichever is given, he is called as half Sawar. This is the second rank, and less than half is considered to be third grade. Okay. So every person, if a person is maintaining equal number of cavalrymen as equal to his rank, then he is called as superior Mansabdar. So each rank consists of 3 grades. So that is the Mansabdari system. So every person should maintain the horse in 1:2 ratio. Okay. So for one cavalryman, they should maintain 2 horses. Okay, 1 horse for traveling and 1 horse for fighting. So 1:2 ratio or 10:20 ratio, that is what they used to call. For every 10 cavalrymen, you have to maintain 20 horses. So both are same. So that is the ratio given there. So Zat is a rank, an indicator of Mansabdar's position in the imperial hierarchy and the salary, that is true. Sawar is a rank indicator number of horsemen a Mansabdar is required to maintain, both horsemen and number of horses, that is also true. In the 17th century, Mansabdars holding 1000 or above Sawar is called as Umara. No, that is wrong. Those who are holding the rank above 5000 is called as Umara. Okay. Those who are holding above 5000 is called as Umara. Amir al Umara. Okay. 5000 and above is called as Amir al Umara. So third statement is wrong here. So since third is wrong, if you just know third is wrong, you will be ending up with A, and it's a very easy question again. Study about the Mansabdari system. Jahangir got impressed by the Turkish fluency of which one of the following European travelers and made him Mansabdar. So in Jahangir's court, for the first time, English travelers came. So under the chairmanship of Captain Hawkins. Captain Hawkins came along with Captain Hawkins. Captain Hawkins is nothing but William Hawkins. So William Hawkins along with William Finch. These two are the travelers. And we know Sir Thomas Roe. That is another traveler. So these are all the 3 English travelers who came to the Mughal court for the first time. So William Hawkins is a person who was well versed in Turkish language. So he used to converse in Turkish. Since he was talking in Turkish language, Jahangir was impressed. Wow, how well he is talking Turkish language. Sami Namabasa Pesudu. Adanala he was impressed by William Hawkins. So what he decided was, he decided to make him a Mansabdar with 400 Sawar, and he allocated a land, made him Mansabdar, and he asked him to start an industry in Surat. So based on this permission only, British people decided to start an industry in Surat. But Britishers were, in Jahangir's court, there was another important person called Noor Jahan. That is the wife of Jahangir. She was more dominant than Jahangir during the Jahangir's time. This Noor Jahan was supporting Portuguese. So because of the Noor Jahan and Portuguese linkages, Noor Jahan pressurized Jahangir not to allow any Englishman into India. So, and hence, with the pressure of Noor Jahan, he revoked the Mansabdari later. But he provided this Mansabdar to William Hawkins because he was well versed in it. Along with William Hawkins, William Finch also came. William Hawkins went direct to the Mughal court and he was talking with the leader. William Finch travelled all over the northwest India, and he gave various detailed account of the social economic life during the Mughal court. And recently William Finch was in news also. In the Ayodhya judgment, in the famous Ayodhya Babri Masjid judgment, the judge mentioned the William Finch's name. In William Finch's account during the Jahangir's time, he has written about the Ram temple, Ayodhya Ram temple. He wrote that people in the Ayodhya region worshipped Ram. They worshipped they worshipped a dome-like structure, and they considered to be that is the birthplace of Ram, and that was cited as an example in the Ayodhya judgment. Apart from this William Finch, there were two other travelers whose name was mentioned in the judgment, and they were Joseph Tiefenthaler, and we are having Robert Montgomery. So Joseph Tiefenthaler was an Italian traveler. Robert Montgomery was again a British traveler. Okay, so he was from Italy and he was again British. So all these three travelers' name was mentioned in the Ayodhya judgment. So study about these three travelers and their account, from which country they came, what they mentioned. Okay, so now we'll go to the next question. Which of the following Sufi saints of Qadariya order? So Qadariya is one of the subclass of the Sufism. Order was condemned by Aurangzeb for his discussion about the Wahdat ul Wujud. Wahdat ul Wujud is the main philosophy of Sufism. Okay, which means the unity of all the God, unity of God. So that is Wahdat ul Wujud, and it is a core belief of Sufism. This Qadariya Sufi saint discussed this Wahdatul Wujud with Shah Jahan and Dara Shikoh, and this was condemned by Aurangzeb, and he was Sheikh Abdul Qadir. Sheikh Abdul Qadir was that Qadariya order Sufi saint who discussed that with Dara Shikoh, and Dara Shikoh, in his one of his account, he has written about Sheikh Abdul Qadir also. So that is the answer. So Sufi movement and Bhakti movement is also very important. Please have a look at that. Again, this model question has came, a literary work, and who is the author. So that is a model. Generally they used to ask a literary work and author. In this model, what they have asked is a literary work and to whom it was dedicated. So this Sangeeta Shiromani was a literary work and it was dedicated to Ibrahim Shah Sharqi of Jaunpur. So there is no single author for this book. A local ruler of Allahabad called Malika. This Malika Shahi is a local ruler in Allahabad. He convened a musical conference where the musician and people of musical knowledge of all over India participated in that. They all together did this composition. They wrote this literary work called Sangeeta Shiromani. They wrote about all the musical tradition of India and various treatises about the music, and this was compiled together in Sanskrit. Okay, and this was dedicated to then ruler of India, then ruler Ibrahim Shah Sharqi of Jaunpur. So that is the background of this book. So there is no single author, it was written by multiple people, but it was dedicated to this particular ruler. Okay, so next question. Now we are going to ancient India. We have finished the medieval. Now we are going to ancient India. Which of the following rulers were identified through matronymics? Matronymics means they will be adding their mother's name along with their own name. So the answer is very easy. It was Satavahana. We know famous leaders like Gautami Putra Satakarni and Vashishta Putra Satakarni. So Gautami and Vashishta is the name of their mothers. So Gautami's Putra is Satakarni and Vashishta's Putra is Pulwami. So they are adding their mother's name along with their own name. So this is called as matronymics, and it was famously followed by Satavahanas. So Satavahana dynasty is one of the famous dynasty which came after this fall of this Mauryan dynasty. So and Mauryan dynasty, and it is one of the most dominating dynasty between the Mauryan dynasty and the Gupta Empire. So that is one thing which you have to note. Consider the following statement about Stone Age in India. So now this question is regarding the Stone Ages. Different periods were identified on the basis of type and technology. Yes, that is true. the different period of stone ages, that is Paleolithic, Mesolithic and Neolithic. So this is how they were classified. Paleolithic was classified into through lower, middle and upper. So again, this is based on evolution. So all this thing was classified based on the type of technology used and size of the stone. In Mesolithic, the stones used were more modern when compared to Paleolithic. So first statement is true. There is no regional variations in type and typology of tools in different periods. That is wrong. There were regional variation. In Mesolithic culture, for the first time, axes were used. And these axe and shape of the axe varied in all over India. In North India we had oval axes, in Western India we had rectangular axes, and hence the shape of the axe varied all over India. So second statement is wrong. There were regional variation. Stone Age cultures of different periods evolved uniformly in neat unilinear fashion all over the subcontinent. This is also wrong. There were no unilinear expansion. So there was no unilinear expansion. See, most of the time these periods were overlapping, right? See, for example, Mesolithic phase in one part of it, there would have been Mesolithic phase in one part of India, and there would have been Neolithic phase in other part of India. Again, if you could see during the Harappan civilization, when the Harappan civilization was flourishing in the Indus River, there was still Neolithic culture and Chalcolithic culture going on in the central India and the northeast India. So there were just overlapping along each other, and there were no different periods, and the periods never evolved uniformly. There was no uniform evolution at all. So that is the one thing which you have to note. And with respect to second point, there were no regional variation they were telling. I would like to clarify the regional variation with respect to axes. In the northwestern India, we had rectangular axes. In northeast India, we had polished stone axes. In southern part, we had oval axis. Oval and pointed axis in the southern India. So there were regional variations. So 1 only is the answer. 2 and 3 is wrong. So this is a very easy question to guess also. So these were all the major classification. From 5 million to 10,000 BC, it was called as Paleolithic. From 10,000 BC to 4,000 BC, it was Mesolithic, and from 5,000 to 1,800, it was Neolithic. If you could see here, it went till 4,000, but it started in 5,000 itself, which means that from 5,000 to 4,000 there were overlap. So there were overlapping, and hence we can't tell this. Okay, and further this Paleolithic was classified into 3. Okay, from 5 million to 50,000 BC, it was classified as lower Paleolithic. Then 50 to 40, it was called as middle, and 40 to 10, it was called as upper. So these were all the 3. Lower, middle, upper, or early, middle, later. So likewise also we will be classifying this Paleolithic period. So the next question. From which one of the following factory sites were limestones and chert blades were mass produced and sent to various Harappan settlements? So various Harappan settlement in Sindh. So Harappan settlements, they used to make a lot of artifacts and handicrafts. We know there were a lot of beads, and there were a lot of ornaments which was used in the Harappan civilization, and the materials and the limestone and chert blades came from Sukkur and Rohri Hills. The Sukkur and Rohri Hills is found in the Sindh region. So this is the actual Sindh region. In this Sindh region, here the Rohri Hills is located, and from this Rohri Hills only this entire Indus Valley civilization received the limestone cherts. So this is one of the additional trivia which you are getting here. In Khetri, from Khetri only they got the copper. Okay, from hills of Baluchistan they got lapis lazuli. So these are all the things. So the next question. Life-size terracotta image of Ganga and Yamuna dating to the period of 300 to 600 AD have been found at. It was found in this region, Achichatra region of Uttar Pradesh. So in this region only they have found the image of Ganga and Yamuna. This is that famous sculpture of Ganga and Yamuna. So one of the famous, Gupta Empire is famous for the golden coins. Another thing for which they were famous is this terracotta, life-size terracotta images. So life-size terracotta sculpture is one of the famous findings of the speciality of the Gupta Empire. And there were 2 types of terracotta images in the Gupta Empire. One was regarding the gods and goddesses, and other was about normal male and female, normal people. Okay. In god and goddesses, we had Ganga, Yamuna, and other Yakshinis, and in male and female, we had the terracotta images of normal people. Okay, so these were all the famous terracotta sculptures of Gupta Empire, and it was found in Achinchatra, Uttar Pradesh. Chronologically arrange the following Sanskrit text starting from the earliest. So they are asking for the chronology here. The earliest writing, see, among all the four, Brihat Samhita, Varamera, Shushruta Samhita, Ashtadhyayi of Panini, and Natya Shastra of Bharat Muni. Earliest one was Ashtadhyayi of Panini. Ashtadhyayi of Panini was from 6th to 5th century BC. So this is the earliest, and followed by that we are having Shushruta Samhita. Shushruta Samhita was in the later part, that is, it was from 2 to 1st century BC. So Ashtadhyayi of Panini talked about the grammar of Sanskrit language. Shushruta Samhita talked about the medicine. It was talked about medicine and surgery which took place in those time. And next we are having Natya Shastra. Natya Shastra Bharat Muni was dated between 1st to 2nd century AD. So Natya Shastra Bharat Muni, here were all the classical dance forms were codified under this book. All the classical dance form was codified in the Natya Shastra. And finally we are having Brihat Samhita. Brihat Samhita is a book of astrology, not astronomy. Astronomy means study of space. Astrology means this Jadagam, Josiam, that thing, horoscope. So it is a famous book of astrology written by Varahamira, Brihat Samhita. So the order is 3241. Ashtadhyayi of Panini 5th century, Shushruta Samhita 1st century, Natya Shastra 2nd century AD, and Brihat Samhita 5th century. So the order is 3241. So the order is 3241. Thank you guys. Today we saw history. In this series, next we will be discussing geography. So I'm planning to make a next video on the geography question, because most of the people who are attending preliminary are generally neglecting this geography area, since they are asking low number of questions, and in this examination, like geoscientist examination or this combined defense services examination, they are asking a lot of questions from geography. Almost 20 questions they have asked in the CDS examination, especially from geography. So we will discuss these geography questions, and that can be potentially repeated or asked in the preliminary also. So we'll see in the next video. Thank you guys. Stay home, stay safe.